निवासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते.
Hi guys, have you ever wondered how Bharatavarsha and its possible contributions to world history is kind of brushed under the carpet? You talk about invention of wheels, Mesopotamia. You talk about invention of money, Mesopotamia. Although some sources will acknowledge that the Chinese civilization may have invented some of these things independently, but somehow we are supposed to believe that none of these inventions happened in the Saraswati Sindhu civilization. Now, I fully understand that, yes, of course, wherever you find the first mention or archaeological remains of a wheel or currency, that is the place you'll have to give credit to for having invented those things, right? Fair enough. I am simply making the case that it is quite possible that historians simply might not have looked hard enough in the Akhand Bharat regions for more evidence because of different reasons like lack of intention of those funding the investigations, quick urbanization time and time again repeatedly for thousands of years, well, until some Fabian socialists decided to deliberately keep the country poor until 1991. And then there's also the issue of large jungles and forests. These last 2 points are important because no one is going to go around uprooting entire towns to check underneath for possible remains of 5,000-year-old wheels. Otherwise, who knows what we may dig up under Varanasi. And also, no one is going to be allowed to destroy an entire forest based on someone's hunch that there might be some old coins underneath. Obviously. But there might be something else as well. Ever since the incoming of Islamic invasions and then European colonization, Bharatiyas did not remain at the forefront of global discourse, and therefore all archaeology and history research remained in the hands of Christian white European colonizers for a large part of time, who were never able to avoid the application of the Abrahamic lens or a Christian mindset to viewing everything around them. Modern-day white European historians claim to not have a religious bias, simply because they have replaced their religious customs of going to a church on Sundays with reading Karl Marx's theories with equal religiosity, which is, by the way, just another Abrahamic theory attempting to rectify Abrahamic faults without ever addressing the Abrahamic nature of the roots of the problems they claim to solve, and therefore they fail miserably each and every time. Which is why, by the way, the decolonial lens is absolutely necessary in discussing everything relating to South Asia, as opposed to the post-colonial or post-modern or the Marxist lenses. But anyway, except for a few archaeologists like B.B. Lal, K.K. Muhammad, Dr. Vasant Shinde, and some historians like Sitaram Goel, this entire academic discipline has been nothing but an Eurocentric Western normative and Marxist hegemony. Because, think of it, historians will admit that there were trade relations between Mesopotamia and the Saraswati civilization since around at least 3000 to 2500 BCE, which is basically about 5000 years ago from today. But somehow, when it comes to things like wheels and money, they are exclusively Mesopotamian things. चक्का लगा के माल कहाँ भेज रहा था मेसोपोटामिया? पैसा इन्वेंट करके व्यापार किससे कर रहा था? Obviously with Saraswati civilization. Now, I'm obviously taking into account that Bharatavarsha, Sanatan Dharma, are the cultural and civilizational descendants of the Saraswati civilization. Unlike Eurocentric historians, I refuse to misappropriate any disappearance of a civilization as a lost culture or lost people. And why do they do that? That is basically the essence of this video. And if you have a problem with the idea that people of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were predecessors of today's Bharatiyas, I suggest you debate the Joint Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Manjul, or RK zoologist Professor Vijay Sathe, or DNA scientist Dr. Neeraj Rai. But anyway, why is everything a lost culture when it comes to pre-Abrahamic civilizations? Well, for two obvious reasons. Firstly, they have to avoid talking about the genocides and or forced conversions of the people of those civilizations. And secondly, they want to avoid giving credit to the survivors from such civilizations. But remember, if the civilization did not survive, then they won't stop talking about it. See their obsession with Vikings. Movie after movie, video game after video game, web series after web series, comic books, graphic novels, popular history books, all discussing Vikings and Norse mythology. नॉर्स माइथोलॉजी ये, नॉर्स माइथोलॉजी वो, सबको वाइकिंग पसंद है अभी, मगर किसी को जानना नहीं है कि वो लोग गायब कैसे हुए. Then you see, Celtic mythology has inspired so many fantasy series like Lord of the Rings, Faithful and the Fallen, etc. अरे गया कहाँ Celtic culture? And now their latest fascination is slavery. But remember two things when they are discussing about slavery, okay? Firstly, when they are talking about slavery, they mean only people of one particular skin color from one particular continent kidnapped and sold off by one particular race. If you talk about Hindus being taken as slaves by Muslim warlords, or how the Romani people like Charlie Chaplin, Elvis Presley, etc. are descendants of Hindu slaves from Rajasthan, Gujarat, Pakistan, Afghanistan, then you are Hindu fascist, RSS ka dalla, etc. And secondly, they don't care that only about 8 to 9% of the entire continent of Africa today practices their pre-Christian and pre-Islamic faith systems. They don't have any problem with their ongoing ontological, epistemological and theological genocide. And, my dear friends, that is why every nice thing of the ancient world seems to be credited to Mesopotamia. Because you can't call anyone Mesopotamian fascist, Sumerian fascist, Celtic fascist or Viking Swamsevak Sangh ka dalla. इनको तो मार मार के क्रिश्चियन और मुसलमान बना दिया. Now they will also say things like Bharatavarsha was a divided society, a weak society because of casteism. That's why all these invasions happened, and because of casteism all the conversions happened. So they are saying that there were no societal inequalities in pre-Abrahamic Africa, Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamia, Native Americans, Mayans, Incas, Aztecs, South America, Latin America that is. And so they became Christian or Muslim by magic. But Hindus survived because casteism made our society so weak and fragmented without any fault of forced conversions by Muslim and Christian rulers. Also, they will say how all minorities all over the world are historically disadvantaged. But Hindus who paid the jizya tax for about 600 years and became poorer as a result of that, are they not historically disadvantaged? They are not historically disadvantaged in that case. Didn't jizya cause generational poverty of some kinds? Don't Hindus deserve reparations from Muslims just like Jews got from Germany, or how African American political organizations today are demanding reparations from white people in America? Sorry for arriving to the point so late into the video, but my question is, how or why aren't the Ashraf class of Muslims considered settler colonialists? Dr. Alicia Carroll, professor of comparative literature and English in University of California, Irvine, writes that, quote, settler colonialism is an ongoing system of power that perpetuates the genocide and repression of indigenous peoples and cultures. Essentially hegemonic in scope, settler colonialism normalizes the continuous settler occupation, exploiting lands and resources. Doesn't that sound familiar? Listen to the definition of settler colonialism by Cornell Law School. Quote, settler colonialism can be defined as a system of oppression based on genocide and colonialism that aims to displace a population of a nation, oftentimes indigenous people, and replace it with a new settler population. End quote. Explain to me then that how are the Ashraf class of Muslims not considered settler colonialists in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India and Bangladesh? For anyone who doesn't know who or what is an Ashraf, they are the upper class of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent who are considered to be of noble lineage as opposed to Ajlafs or Arzals or Pasmandas. So basically, Ashrafs are descendants of the Islamic invaders who marry only amongst each other and oppress not only non-Muslims, but also non-Ashraf Muslims all around them, even in universities, in their local neighborhoods. If you are an Indian, you think you know the meaning of the word Sharif, right? Wrong. Sharif is the singular word and Ashraf is the plural word. Because of Bollywood's obsession with Urdu, we have come to believe that Sharif means a nice, well-mannered person, but that is just the Ashraf's way of saying to you that everyone else is ill-mannered and non-cultured. While I am happy to be called ill-mannered, are you? And by the way, remember, the Islamic invaders did not bring any women with them. Well, then how are their descendants all around us to this date? Do you think Hindu women fell in love with these genocidal maniacs and danced around trees singing Sufi shairi and then had kids with them? Only a Marxist feminist can ignore mass rapes, forced conversions and slavery of an entire subcontinent's women just because the perpetrator pretends to be there alive for now. Okay, I know what a left-wing academic will say to me in the issue of calling Ashrafs settler colonialists in India. They will say they don't have state power and they are numerically a minority. Well, firstly, that shouldn't stop you from writing research papers on Ashraf colonialism in Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh, which you haven't. But more importantly, remember, Brahmins and European colonizers were also never the majority in the history of Bharatavarsha. So would you say then that Brahmins also never oppressed anyone, and neither did the British? I guess you wouldn't. Okay, then you would shift the goalpost and focus on the argument of Ashrafs not having state power today instead of going on saying minority, right? My question to you then, the leftist, is then that how is the Waqf board so mind-bogglingly powerful? Firstly, you should note exactly how powerful the Waqf board is. And secondly, how did they get that power? I am arguing that Indian political parties who indulge in open Islamic appeasement are the direct enablers of indirect Islamic state power. And we have plenty of such parties, and if you look at the data, you could argue that all parties are Islamic appeasers, with differences in only the degree of their appeasement. If you say Hindus are a privileged majority with state power, I ask you, why then are the funds of only and only Hindu temples under direct control of the government and not religious institutions of other faiths? How can the All India Muslim Personal Law Board go on perpetuating Sharia law for people of the Islamic faith? If these aren't examples of state power, what is? If not having state power could break up the country into 4 pieces, why do you even need state power? Remember, Babur raised towers of Hindu skulls at Khanua in 1527. His son and allegedly the greatest Mughal king, Akbar, ordered the brutal massacre of more than 30,000 Rajput warriors when he captured the Chittorgarh fort in 1568. Even the Bahmani sultans had an annual ritual of killing a minimum of 100,000 Hindus. Historian K.S. Lal has written that the population of the Indian subcontinent in 1000 CE, that is AD if you studied history when you were as a 90s or 80s kid, we now call it CE. AD is now called CE, okay? Historian K.S. Lal has written that the population of the Indian subcontinent in 1000 CE was around 200 million and in 1500 was about 170 million. Lal estimated that about 60 to 80 million people died in India between 1000 and 1525 as a result of the Islamic invasion of the Indian subcontinent. He also observed that more than 2 million Hindus died during Mahmud of Ghazni's invasions of India alone. Just that one invasion alone. American historian Will Durant writes in his 1935 book that, quote, "The Mohammedan conquest of India is probably the bloodiest story in history. The Islamic historians and scholars have recorded with glee and pride the slaughters of Hindus, forced conversions, abduction of Hindu women and children to slave markets, and the destruction of temples carried out by the warriors of Islam during 800 AD to 1700 AD. Millions of Hindus were converted to Islam by sword during this period." End quote. So all I'm asking the world is, how long will you go on invisibilizing the slavery and genocides of Hindus, and how long will you ignore the oppressions of Ashraf settler colonialists in South Asia? So if any commie is watching this, I advise you, for your own academic benefit, take some time out of your busy Hindu-phobic schedule and look at the suffering and subsequent survival of the last and greatest pagan civilization in the history of the cosmos. And for the non-commies watching this, I would like to end this video with a quote from Sri Aurobindo Ghosh's Uttarpada speech. I say that it is the Sanatan Dharma, which is for us, is nationalism. This Hindu nation was born with the Sanatan Dharma. With it, it moves, and with it, it grows. When the Sanatan Dharma declines, then the nation declines. And if the Sanatan Dharma were capable of perishing, with the Sanatan Dharma, it would perish. The Sanatan Dharma, that is nationalism. This is the message that I have to speak to you.